I totally stole this. And that's the lick that I end up busting out there at the end. Howdy there, friend. I am joined here today by my friend Stephen Swift. Stephen and I got hooked up through the Lessons with Marcel private guitar lessons a couple years ago now, but Stephen is the guitarist and founding member of a great band from out west called Mountaintop Sound. And today we're going to talk about their latest album release, which I was featured on. Thanks so much for featuring me on a track there, Stephen. But I thought we could also dive into some of the background of Mountaintop Sound and get a little bit of that scoop, and then maybe dive into some of the technical underpinnings of the solo that I created for their track. Stephen, how you doing, man?
Good. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
This is so awesome.
Well, thanks for joining me on the channel today, dude. I've been excited to talk to you about this. It's weird having a formal interview with you because I feel like we know each other pretty well at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, how long did you take lessons from me? That was maybe about a year, right?
Yeah, almost a year. And then that's when I feel like we both made the mutual decision. It was probably best I started therapy and stopped coming to you.
I mean, guitar lessons are a certain kind of therapy, but sometimes you need the heavier guns, right? You know what I mean?
Yes. I went to the heavier guns, and I'm enjoying that now. I've been doing that for a couple months.
Well, that's great, dude. Welcome to the club.
I was
right?
like, man,
Therapy
I felt
buddies.
like I was burdening you with like all of my drama all the time, and I was doing very little guitar actual questioning, you know. So, but I was like, okay, let's do this.
I totally get it, dude. Well, let's what I want to say, rewind things back into the past for you, and maybe we'll, find the beginnings of why you needed to go to therapy in this discussion. Joking. So you have a band with your partner April, and you've been playing music for a while. You're an artist. You're an audio engineer. So let's go all the way back and let's talk about how did you get started in music? Where did Mountaintop Sound start, and all that kind of stuff? Give me a little bit of background.
Yeah, so music for me started at a very early age. It was 5th grade. I decided I wanted to be a musician. You know, it's like they say, what instrument do you want to play? And I didn't find out till later. I'll make this story short, but I wanted to be a drummer. And so I brought home a snare first day. I learned my paradiddle. I was ready to go.
Yeah.
I came home, and this is in Florida, in the Keys, where I spent my formative years, my younger years. And next Monday, I came in after a weekend of just banging on that drum, so excited. And the teacher came in and goes, give me the drum. You now play French horn." And switch me over to French horn. Fast
Pretty much
forward
the same thing.
in my life, I'm like 20 or something, and my dad says, "Oh yeah, I remember you wanted to be a drummer." He goes, "You came home with that damn snare." And I called the teacher and said if he brought it home again, it was going to end up at the bottom of the canal. So
It was
started
sabotage from your dad.
from the beginning. So began my journey of into brass instruments, and eventually led me to tuba. I was classically trained on tuba and sousaphone and marching upright tuba and all that. But then I really wanted to be a drummer still. So by the time I got to high school, I actually begged my teacher, who was a wonderful jazz teacher. His name was Steve Harris, and I believe he still teaches even to this day. But he taught me jazz drums. And one of the highlights of my life was Maynard Ferguson, great jazz trumpetist. When I was in high school, he would come through and he would do these things in Key West. It was Key West High School I went to. They would do these intensives and he was known for doing this at high schools all over the world. All over the U.S. He would go through and stay for a while in a place. And he did a residency and hung out with us. And he came into our class and did some lessons, and he pointed at me on drums and some other musicians in there and said, "You're all my opening band." And we got to play with Maynard Ferguson. So that was teenage, early years, really getting that love for music and being on stage. And I can remember being in the orchestra and all of us crying at one time, an orchestra of coming together for one piece of music. It sounded beautiful. Everyone was tearing up. Our teacher was tearing up as he was conducting us, and I remember back then even thinking I want this all the time. Yeah. So
I totally relate to that, man. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah. And then played music for years. played rock bands, did all that. And then eventually about 10 years ago, April and I partnered up both in life and in music. And that's when we started Mountaintop Sound. And we've been doing it ever since as the core two of us. And then the other usual two musicians in the band are always kind of modular. Like it's been changing wherever we move, you know. We're still friends with everybody we played with, but some people went off to be rock stars or whatever. And, you know, you know how it is.
Absolutely. So where did the band start, right? Because you guys moved to Oregon, right, in the middle of that. You didn't originate there because like you did high school in like Florida Keys, and then there was kind of some stuff in between there, right?
Yeah, so I ended up out in southern Utah, and that's where I was working on my arts education. So I'm an art and design professor, so that's what my day job is, right, besides my love of music, because we all know how much money we make at music.
Oh, absolutely.
but yeah, I really enjoyed it, and that's where I was playing in I was playing in rock band and doing a lot of covers, playing a lot of bars, playing a lot of little mini festivals, and then kind of got sick of lugging around 100-pound amps everywhere and said, I'm going to get back into my roots, because my childhood, before we moved to the Keys, I was born in Roanoke, Virginia. So there's a lot of bluegrass history that comes through that, right? You know, as we're right down the road from the first bluegrass festival ever, you know. When you look at the tickets, man, it says Roanoke on there. but super cool, you know. So I started diving back into that history when COVID hit and was like, you know what? I'm going to take the plunge and really learn flat picking. And we had already started Mountaintop Sound at that point. We were very folky. Our first album is really relaxed and like softer stuff, not really getting jammy at all. Yeah. And then, you know, over the course of 2 years of being locked in my room learning flat picking, that's where I then met you and became connected with you over email. And then by the time we moved here, that's when we started lessons a little over a year ago, I think it was. And yeah, it's been true love ever since.
Man, that's really cool. And I'm glad that you steered through that, because even though we had lessons and stuff together, it was more like acutely focused to guitar and stuff like that. So to hear the like personal background before that, and hearing like the rock stuff, you know, that all makes sense, having heard your playing and seen you flat pick. And I think I love that about your style, you know, because I was such a huge rock musician and fan myself as a kid. So can you tell me a little bit about the Oregon scene and like your guys' activity out there? Because looking at your schedule, you've got gigs like all the time. You guys are busy, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So this is a really cool scene. Like southern Utah, before we moved here, not much bluegrass happening and not really many bluegrass jams. And since we've moved here to Oregon, when I first moved here, I didn't know anybody. We weren't playing as much. Although, honestly, we booked our first gig within the first week we lived here. Like walked into, and now we're good friends with that place. But yeah, the scene here is really cool. There's a lot of bluegrass pickers up in this neck of the woods. And I mean, I think Vince from Leftover Salmon, I think is he's from this area. He lived in Grants Pass for a long time, which is just up the road from us.
Okay.
But then in general, there's a lot of great like just bluegrass pickup jams and hanging out. You know, it's like a Tuesday morning thing. There's a Sunday thing. There's a Monday thing, and there's lots of open mics. So the music scene here is pretty rich. The other cool thing I enjoy about it, actually, which is a big difference between here and southern Utah, is that there's a lot of places to play. So there's no real competition. Like there, you know, in other areas I've lived in when it comes to music, there's not as many places to play. So it's like kind of musicians sort of hold their cards close to their vest on where they're playing or what they're doing. But here it's sort of like a big family. Like honestly, we don't want to play as many gigs as we're playing. Like we're cutting back this year because we did 42 gigs last year, and we're like, that's too much. It was
for people with day jobs, that's a lot, right? Like, that's.
Yeah. Yeah, I made that mistake. I booked the first 9 weekends of a semester accidentally one time and literally had no days off for 9 weeks straight. And at the end of that, I went, I'm never doing this again. But so I'm a little more mindful of booking. But it's been great because we've also been getting to some bigger shows. You know, like we got to open up for Della May just a couple of weeks ago. That was wonderful. They were super cool to hang out with and just kind of hear about their life on the road. And I'll be honest, we were all hanging out backstage, and I said, y'all are superheroes to me. Like the fact that you're on the road doing this and this is your full-time gig, I'm amazed at it. And they said, keep teaching. it's like keep your date, please keep teaching. This is tough. This is a long, hard road, and so
man, well, to hear that from seasoned veterans though, right? Like, I think a lot of people, I did specifically, because I mean, this, I toured for maybe like 7 years and then kind of transitioned over into the teaching thing, like a little bit of college and some private lessons on the side, kind of like, your lifestyle now. I feel like in those 7 years that I was on the road, I aged 40.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just like, it's like you were talking about, when you booked those 9 weeks in a row, that's almost like a touring schedule, because you were working a 40-hour week and then you didn't have any days off. Like when you're on the road, if you get to go someplace cool, you don't actually get to experience that cool place because you're loading your sound gear in, you're doing sound check, you're eating dinner, you're playing the show, and then you're driving 8 hours to the next show, right?
Yep.
So, man, that's cool to hear that from those guys, and they're warriors. I know a couple of them, Kimber.
And it's a great scene out here, yeah. And we've got some great festivals here, like Wintergrass and things like that are really close to us. We went and did like a artist showcase thing at Wintergrass last year. It was a lot of fun. Met a lot of other really great pickers and got to do the thing. But I also learned my other lesson there was that I learned I am not the all-day picker. There's people that can do that, and more power to them. But I'm like a couple of hours sitting around picking in a circle, and then I'm ready for lunch, or like.
I like to talk too much too, you know what I mean? Just like BSing and hanging with people is part of the vibe,
Yeah.
I feel that, man. Well, that's cool, Steven. Well, sweet, man. That's kind of a cool overview of the Oregon scene. I knew that there were a lot of bands out there, but it's interesting to hear the kind of like you said, like supportive community vibe, instead of more of the competitive one. What about this new project that you guys have out? Because I've looked at your discography, and you guys do have, you've been steadily releasing content over the last few years since the group's been out. Can you talk a little bit about, like, you mentioned at the beginning of the career it was like more folky, and then how has the sound of the band evolved over time to now, and maybe what does this project represent in terms of that in the band?
Well, and this is now a 6-year span. We've released an album every 2 years, so since our first album. So we have 2 albums out already. Our 3rd album is coming out very soon, actually March 7th, so that'll be great. A couple days before my birthday, which it's not on purpose, but it tends to be like always the release time, because we start the album in the summer, and then it, like, you know how it is. It takes 8 months.
Mix through the fall and winter,
to do everything, and everyone's schedules and everything else. And our current live band is on the new album, just like our last 2 albums. Like our first album, our current live band then helped play some parts on there for us, and so that first album is very folky, kind of prettier stuff. We were just getting our sound as a couple of musicians, and I wanted to relax more. I was sick of being in the rock scene. The rock scene's fun, but a lot of heavy equipment and a lot of work. It's 8-hour day for an hour of fun. And so then our second album, we kind of started getting. That's when that came during the sort of COVID times when we were picking up our instruments. I was particularly trying and learn flat picking a little more, which is when I then discovered lessons from Marcel. Because if you look up how to flat pick on YouTube, bam, it's pretty much Marcel. So that was really cool, and I loved a lot of his earlier videos, watched a bunch of those, and that kind of led into our second album, which I was like, I'm learning some licks. I feel like I can do a couple of things. And then that took me down the road of wanting to learn even more, where we met. And now the third album, I feel like we've blended the 2 things together. So that second album, we were trying to be more jammy, more bluegrass, more flat picking, but also more kind of like jam band stuff. I'm an old like metal and jam band guy. Like I'm sort of a weird mix of those things. So and I often talk to friends about that style wise when you're flat picking. Like 16th notes runs are the same thing I was learning Metallica when I first picked up the guitar than now when I'm trying to learn Tony Rice, or somebody else, yeah. It's kind of the same thought process and just a different sound, once. So
yeah, it's different on a dreadnought than it is a Explorer or an SG, right?
Yep, and couple of fake
SG,
ones
there
behind
it is. Yeah,
right there. but we just enjoyed the heck out of it, and so now the third album, I feel like we've combined both those worlds. We're now that we do live in Oregon, actually it's kind of cool. The mindset of being a live musician in Utah was very like, you're here to entertain us, play something we can dance to. And that's fine. That was what people wanted there. So I always had that kind of like, okay, we got to like keep people having fun and keep them up and dancing. But since we've moved to Oregon, it's much more of a creative, like forward thinking community here. And so they're actually, the crowds are happy to hear your originals and will like learn the words to, like a couple of cool people, and now we consider them friends. We don't ever consider people fans. We consider them friends. But we have friends that come to shows and they're singing our songs like lyrics. I see them mouthing lyrics that aren't even released yet. Like that's a good feeling when someone's paying attention enough to your music, and that's an original tune. So that surprises us.
Well, can you talk a little bit, since she's not here to kind of represent herself, can you talk a little bit about April and kind of your guys' musical journey a little bit too? Because I know that, did she play the mandolin before you guys got together and started doing this, or was it kind of like as you started doing it, right? Is that...
But she was also loved drums actually as a young child and loved playing drums and wanted to, and actually went through with it, played a lot of drums on her own, and then was just kind of like dabbling with guitar and kind of knew a little bit about guitar as she got going. So when we first got together, if you look back at our old videos, you can find videos of her and I jamming, and it's just me on acoustic and her playing a box and singing with me. So she was actually like a drummer in the first version of Mountaintop Sound. And then from there, she was like, drums aren't really working. And she's like, I'm not going to play another guitar, 2 guitarists. We don't really need that. And she's like, what else could we do? And so we just sort of naturally became like, I had a mandolin. She started picking around with it. It was like it was a Kentucky that I had for a long time. And then she said, I like this. I'm ready to like go for it. And so she started learning mandolin with the band. So she's still on that journey. She's learning as we go, and really proud of her. She's been playing now mandolin for probably officially 5 or 6 years. Not very long for someone to pick up an instrument who never really played a string instrument that much before. And to be playing it live in front of people,
it's inspiring to me, man, because like we're both educators and we see people through from oftentimes, square one to the end or whatever. And for her to sound like she does inside of 5 years, like that's quite an accomplishment. Insert clip here.
So we were so excited to have you on the song. Couldn't believe that you were able to lend your amazingness. But the song Stage itself is, it's about like that fear and joy we get of being on stage. When we're at home and we're with the live band and we're hanging out, playing and practicing songs for a show, we are knocking it out of the park. I'm Tony, banjo player is JD. Everybody has got their parts down. And then as soon as we get in front of other humans, what is an instrument? I don't know my what is a where am I?
Yeah.
So I was trying to like think. I was like, man, what's I want to write a song that's sort of about like letting go, because we talk about that a lot in our band. We talk about like we're so focused and practice and we're trying so hard, and then we don't want to. That's great when you're in your practice mode. But we're like one beer deep and having a great time at home for practice, like band practice, is just a joy, and everybody's hitting awesome, hitting all cylinders.
Yeah.
But then you get in front of a crowd and the nerves kick in, or you get a little anxious or something like that, and you just don't know, what's going to happen. So we really kind of were like, okay. So I wrote this song sort of about that idea of like, just let go, have fun. Like the whole point of us playing a show is for all of us to have a good time, crowd included. It's just a circular motion of, enjoyment, of joy, of audio, audio into your ears, bring.
Yeah, man.
So stage is about that. And I thought, man, well, what a better way to collaborate than to someone else who knows what it's like, and someone I've talked so much about the song with, and have you lend some of your ninja skills on guitar for it. So that was fantastic. And then when we got the track back, it was really cute, because April and I we threw it right on the track and listened to it in the living room, and she was like, dang, he's killing it. Like, what the hell is happening right now? Like on our song. It sounds like a totally different song. And the cool thing too is, like, we've shared this song now, because you had licks throughout the whole song, and you kind of told me, just take and leave what you want. I left the whole damn thing in.
Not my intention.
I said, Hayes is all over this track. This is featuring Hayes. And so then we've shared the song now with a couple of friends who also we play shows with occasionally and stuff, and they've heard the version of the album before it's released. And now when they see us live, they're like, we can't unhear his licks on it. And so now it's become this thing where I think I actually have to try and learn to sing and then play your lick in between the parts to make people like enjoy it on stage. It's going to be hard.
So sorry. So sorry. That's like, yeah, I didn't realize that I was going to force you into like learning a Chris Thiele skill set or whatever, where you playing 16th note lines while singing,
While singing. Yeah, I know. And he's pretty good at that. So let's talk about, should I grab the guitar?
Yeah, man, let's actually
maybe
grab.
You can tell me a little bit. I remember when I was working on this song while I was taking lessons from you.
Yes.
And so, the has this lick, and then the chords for the verse we do, like, it's a G formation. We're on capo 2 obviously, but I'm doing a G formation, D, and then A, D, and then E minor, and then D, and then A, and then E minor, and then G resolves, and then back to the little kind of like A lick. And that's sort of what all of it's built out of. That's the whole song is built out of that. And I think when we were working on it, you mentioned what it was in.
Yeah, so this was, I think, a topic of conversation that came up pretty frequently in our lessons together, because you have so much lead playing experience and know a bunch of different genres of music, and had been, I'll say, like, you came to me with a kind of like working knowledge of modes, or at least what they were, right? Like modes of the major scale. But then there would be these instances, like when we were talking about this song, where it's like, well, what key is this actually in? Like, what mode is this tune actually in? And I kind of hear, like, just because of how much that A comes back, like, that's kind of the home base of the tune, right? Like that A sus or A major, however you want to see it, right, with that little lick in there. And if you analyze all those chords that you just shot out there, we had like some A's, some G's, some D's, an E minor, right? Most people, if you put all those chords together and put them in alphabetical order, you would have like, D, E minor, G, and A, in alphabetical order. And if you wrote those out, like, you would probably think that it was in the key of D, right? Because all of those chords are contained within the key of D. But because that A is kind of the home base, we're actually working with a modal tune here, right? And I think where our conversation landed was that you had written a Mixolydian tune. This is a tune that is centered around that A chord from the D major scale, capo 2, so we're really like, you know, E major, B major, kind of mixolydian. But it was really cool to kind of have some of those conversations because you would come to me with these fully fleshed out ideas. It's like your body and your mind and ears know what modes are, you know what I mean? But I think some of our conversations were just like, what are the, like, you know, weird little pedantic rules that, you know, go with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, it's kind of what, and this is my shameless plug for Take Lessons from Hayes. Take lessons from Hayes, because what it did, and you told me this, the very first lesson you told me is you said, you're the kind of guy I want to do lessons with for like a year until I get you to a point where you feel like you can take off from there.
And go away.
yeah. And then I'm done with you. Thanks. We're buds now. Okay, see you later.
Exactly. Yeah, now you can do graphic design work for me and I'll record on your tracks, right?
Hell yeah. I really appreciated it, and but it's cool because then you filled in some of the blanks that I had when I was thinking about like modes or unlocking. For me, what all I really wanted to do was unlock the whole, you know, guitar. I wanted to know, in my mind, I think of it as like notes. I want to know every good note I can hit when I'm playing in a feel or a key, you know, whatever that is. And so unlocking that fretboard for me really was, and some of the things that really opened up was when you were explaining how you can be in a key, but then related keys next to it, you use all those same notes to solo with, and that's when it finally clicked. And I went, oh, okay, wow. So, you know, if I'm in E minor, that means if I play all the notes in D major, right, you know, those all connect.
Yes.
And so it was those sorts of things where I unlocked how they related to each other. Yeah. And then,
that's great. It was really inspiring to kind of see that light bulb click on for you, because it was one of those things, you had so much technical facility on the instrument. Anyone listening to this track will, you know, hear that. That all you had to do was just be able to, like you said, relate that one bit of information. Like now your brain just automatically knows where the good notes are. I remember even sometimes I'd be like, well, it's playing the key of D, but from E minor, and you're just like, whoop, you know, like it was right there because you had studied all these scales, but having to relate them to the different, like you were saying, chords in the key or chords in like slightly related keys, you know, that's hard stuff when you start to try and think through it. So,
and I'm not a music theory guy.
I remember that theory even being part of our conversations too, right? It's like, all right, we need this much music theory, and then I'm gonna go run away and like play with this, you know?
Yeah. And thank you for that.
I'm totally with you, man. And I am a person. I think I run into this with myself because theory helped me unlock music. Like I didn't come from like a musical family and stuff, and like understanding the rules helped me interpret the sound later, so I get jacked up about the rules. But I think the most important thing for anyone is to get hands on the instrument. Like understand just like as much as you barely need to understand, and then just go play. You know what I mean? Because your body is going to intuit some of those rules. We actually are so much smarter musically than I think we give ourselves credit for, because we've been listening to music our entire lives. We've been internalizing these rules without like knowing what they are. In the same way that like speaking English, that's how we learned it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I always try to draw that connection. So I appreciated the fact that you were like, no, man, I want to be a native speaker on this crap. Don't give me your nouns and verbs and adverbs and stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, it's been fun, but I know a little more now thanks to you. So
no, it's good, man. It's balance, right? Yeah.
So okay, so now I get to ask a question.
Yeah.
So then. Now we're talking about the song. You get in. You're getting ready to do the solo for us and play all these awesome licks all over the song. What went into your mind then? How did you? What was your process for getting that?
Yeah. So as I was playing through this song, one thing that I really enjoy about the way that you put the chords together and the riffs together in this, like we mentioned, it is like a mixolydian, like modal kind of tune, but that A chord, you rely on that like 9 or sus2, however you want to kind of view that note. So to me, whenever I hear someone like you using chords like that, that means that color tones are okay, meaning that if I play some notes that are outside of the chord that I'm on at that given point in time, it'll add a little bit of breadth and depth to the solo, as opposed to just this thing that sounds kind of calculated and good over top of the chord. It's something that's a little more nuanced, right? So I tried specifically to steer into areas where I wasn't always playing, you know, D, F sharp, A over a D chord. You know what I mean? I was trying to put some E's and some B's over top of that. You know what I mean? And I know I'm getting into the theory talk again, but it was more like, as I'm hearing my way through this, I wanted to land on those notes that added a color to the chord, as opposed to ones that highlighted what that chord was.
You did this, everybody we've showed it to, you do this like jazzy walk down thing in the end of the main solo.
Yeah.
That whenever people hear it, they just get excited. And I don't know if there's a way to talk about that. I don't. That's just the joy of music, I feel, you know, because like everyone who's heard it, their face instantly goes like, "Ooh," you know. Oh my goodness.
That's great, dude.
I just got a little tickle, you know.
So in that section that you just talked about, the kind of like descending lick thing, this is something that I always try to mess with when I'm in a solo too. Instead of thinking so much about the theory of it, I also try to create like an emotional arc or shape to it. I almost think about each guitar solo that I take as really like a hero's journey type of narrative. I know that sounds ridiculous, right? But
Joseph Campbell.
But it's like, yeah, seriously. Like I think, you know, people talk about this in various media. I'm sure you think about this with, you know, art composition and things like that too. Like if you're telling a story through a medium, there have to be certain elements. And to me, in this solo, I tried to introduce some of these single string ideas because I knew that I was going to take the E string and climb up that E string to build the emotional energy toward the end of the solo. We've kind of talked about this, that like, you know, low sounds are more muted, high sounds bring up the energy. So the beginning of the solo, I'm messing more with stuff in like first position. And then as the solo goes on, you can hear me, you know what I mean? Climbing up that string to kind of bring us up into the stratosphere. And then, and that's the lick that I end up busting out there at the end. And like I said, that was the one where I'm like, I'm playing a bunch of notes over these chords that don't relate whatsoever, but it's creating that sense of tension because of that for the big release right at the end, you know, like when it comes back down to the end of the solo. And that
what was that?
Yeah, so this lick, I totally stole this. Mark O'Connor, another West Coast, you know, like amazing superhuman musician, right? I heard him play a lick similar to this in some of the Winfield arrangements he did when he was like 14 and won. I think he was maybe 16 when he won Winfield. But it's kind of like the way that I see that is like a minor 7 arpeggio. So like if we're speaking in true pitches here, like kind of B mixolydian is our key. This I would see as like a G sharp minor 7 kind of thing. And then the lick is just take that, so you start at the top of the arpeggio, and then you shift it down a half step and play the arpeggio back up. And then same thing, shift down a half step. That kind of thing. So, and really what I'm thinking about is like, my destination, or my starting chord is in the key. My destination chord is in the key. Everything in between doesn't matter. Its purpose is tension because there's the release coming at the end. You know what I mean? So this is where we can kind of go more into that like less theory minded zone, right? And say it's like if it's creating a sense of tension, I don't care what it is and how it relates to the key at this point in time. You know what I mean? It's serving its function. So all right. Well, I guess now that I've revealed all of the secrets to my solo that I put on your track there, that's probably a good place to leave this interview for today, right? You know, don't want to give it all away, you know. But before we get out of here, Stephen, can you tell folks where they can find the album, when it's going to be released, and all that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have the album comes out on March 7th. That'll be where you can find it anywhere you Insta spotted apples or Google face Googles or whatever else you look at. and then from there, we'll also have about a week beforehand pre-orders for CDs. We've already got the CDs, and we even found a few friends reached out to us and said, well, we want the new album on vinyl. And I was like, well, you know what, man? I'm not independently wealthy, and I don't have $7,000 to buy 200 vinyl to get pressed. But we found a place online out of Europe that does print-to-order vinyl, and a couple of other bands that we know have tried it and got a really great quality vinyl of it they were happy with. So we've set it up there to where you'll also be able to order it on vinyl, and that'll start. The vinyl pre-orders start in a week as well. So
that's great, man. So you're telling me it's kind of like a drop ship type of setup. Like they'll print one at a time. Man, that's so cool. I got to look into that.
It's the band doesn't make a ton of money off of the vinyl, but the great thing is that a human can get a vinyl of your record for it.
Yeah, that's the point, right?
Yeah, and so we were just really happy to be able to offer that as well, and we're excited because we ordered our own test copy. So once we get that, we'll be sharing it on the interwebs and all that, and talking about it a bunch, and we can't wait to start sharing and connecting with you online and making sure everybody knows that you're all over this song. So
oh man, well you can bet that I'll be blasting it out to the masses as well. I was very honored that you guys asked me to be on this track, and hope that it's not the last one.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, let's do some more. I would love it.
Awesome,
and if actually,
Steven,
sometime we need to get you out here.
Yeah, dude, man, it's been a while since I've been out to Oregon. I'm teaching a camp in Idaho, which is pretty dang close to Oregon, you know. So.
Okay, yeah, let's talk.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for spending your time with me today, Stephen. Everyone, if you're interested in checking out Mountaintop Sound, there are links below in the description and all that kind of stuff. And definitely go buy their album. March 7th, it's released here, and I'm really excited for that. Stephen, thanks so much, man. Tell April said hey, and we'll catch you down the line sometime.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, peace, dude.